God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege, and this is the Protege program. The Thanksgiving holiday is here. All that stands between you and hopefully your day off is this video, so tune in. We're going to just do a grab bag of news stories that I found interesting from today, from the headlines. So I hope that you enjoy. Hope that you leave a like and subscribe when we get to the end. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Let's get to it. So, first of all, we're still talking about, I don't mean to laugh because the reason that we're talking about this story is hilarious. We're still talking about the sexual harassment allegations. Various public figures are still coming under fire. The list of names continues to grow. I thought about doing a video highlighting the politics of each person that's been accused thus far and doing a scoreboard of sorts, but I ultimately scrapped it for now anyway. Maybe I'll do that at a later date. Until these scandals end, the left is going to continue to make fools of themselves. Remember, Gloria Borger came out of the closet, so to speak, as a rape apologist on CNN the other day. And another CNN reporter has decided that the drain of talent from news networks based on sexual harassment allegations is not worth the preservation of the feminist agenda. I find this funny. Apparently, Dylan Byers decided he was going to tweet, "Beyond the pain, humiliation women have endured," which is, of course, the paramount issue. It is worth taking stock of the incredible drain of talent from media entertainment taking place right now. Never has so much talent left the industry all at once. You know, this would be like one of ESPN's reporters tweeting, in light of the rampant steroid abuse among the professional athlete community, it's worth taking note of the incredible drain of talent that's happening in light of these athletes being banned from the sport for cheating. You know, it would be, I'm sure I can think of another example, but, you know, I think the rap calls it tone deaf aptly. You know, as Mr. Byers points out, the paramount issue is the sexual harassment. And we can talk about the rampancy with which it seems to be afflicting the Democrats and their allies. But the paramount issue is the sexual harassment allegations. They need to be investigated, and to what extent it can be proven, the perpetrators need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Have I sufficiently disavowed sexual harassment yet? That includes individuals like President George H.W. Bush and Judge Roy Moore. You know, if the allegations are true, then there ought to be evidence for these allegations. And if there is evidence, then they ought to be prosecuted and punished to the fullest extent of the law. If any person is not guilty of these allegations, then there will not be evidence, I would hope, and they will not be prosecuted and will not be punished. Until then, what their employers do with them and what the voters do in the case of Judge Moore is up to the employers and the voters. Yeah, if charges aren't going to be brought against the individuals in the media who are being accused of sexual harassment and impropriety, then they ought not lose their jobs over it. I think that's fair to say. I think that's intellectually honest of me to say, because after all, I said Judge Moore shouldn't drop out of the race, shouldn't be forced out of the race if the allegations against him are untrue and charges are not brought. So by the same token, the reporters and public figures in the media that are being booted from their jobs because of sexual harassment allegations, that shouldn't be happening to them if those things aren't true or if charges aren't going to be brought. Just my opinion. That doesn't mean, never mind. Moving right along, in related news, the Times, that would be the New York Times, is torn about whether Glenn Thrush should lose his job over sexual misconduct allegations. Now, changing gears here for a moment, I just said that I personally don't believe that anyone merely accused of sexual impropriety should lose their livelihood, be forced out of their livelihood, simply because of the allegation. That being said, the mantra from the left and from feminism is to believe people that bring accusations, especially if they're women. Therefore, if a woman brings an allegation of sexual impropriety against Mr. Thrush, then according to the dictates of feminism and the Democrat Party, Glenn Thrush ought to be not only have his life ruined, but he should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Not prosecuted, punished. Just straight up punished. He should lose his job. He should go to prison. He should have to sign up for the registry of sex offenders. Now, this is all according to the leftist dogma, by the way. This isn't my personal opinion. If the left is consistent, Glenn Thrush will be fired. He will lose his job. But the left is not consistent. The left, the only, this is ironic, the only thing that the left is consistent in is defending their own. And very, very rarely do they ever turn on their own. They're in the process of attempting to turn on Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. It remains to be seen if that will happen. But in the height of the presidential campaign, when it was most critical that Bill and Hillary's reputations be preserved, the left was all hands on deck in defending those two, despite the allegations brought against Mr. Clinton by several women. Now, in other news, Alphabet, which is the company that owns Google, the CEO, Eric Schmidt, said it can be very difficult for Google's search algorithm to understand the truth. Now, I wonder why that might be. Could it be because the left, who I'm sure Eric Schmidt is a member of, does not believe that objective truth exists? Could it be that the left has a fundamentally flawed understanding of what the truth is? And that is why it is hard for them to program a Google search algorithm that understands truth. Let's get into some of Eric Schmidt's statements and see just exactly what he means by this. Let's say that this group believes fact A and this group believes fact B, and you passionately disagree with each other, and you're all publishing and writing about it, and so forth. It's very difficult for us to understand the truth. Well, by saying that fact A, by calling it fact A and fact B, they're both true. They're both fact. You've accepted in the premise of your hypothetical that both statements are fact. For example, Fact A might be the sky is blue. Fact B might be the summer grass is green. No, something. Let's just use innocuous examples like that. And I'm going to assume that you don't mean that fact A and fact B are both true. I'm assuming that you mean that Group A believes fact A to the exclusion of believing fact B, and Group B believes fact B to the exclusion of believing fact A, where facts, quote-unquote, facts A and B are diametrically opposed, in which case one of them is not fact, and one of them is fact, in which case they're not both facts. They would be statement A and statement B. But I'm sure that that's what Mr. Schmidt means, and not that both statements are true. Therefore, how do we decide who is speaking the truth about fact A and fact B? So when it gets into a contest of Group A versus Group B, you can imagine what I'm talking about. It is difficult for us to sort out which rank, A or B, is higher. And there we get to the heart of the issue. It's not the facts that Mr. Schmidt is concerned with. It's the groups of people that believe the facts. And so he's not... and so the concern is to decide which, quote-unquote, fact, which statement is fact. And you have these two groups that are doing a lot of writing about the quote-unquote facts. And so Google now has to decide which one to rank higher than the other, because if both groups can thoroughly discredit each other's facts, then on what basis can we call them facts? Now, where did he talk about? He talked about consensus. Where did it come from? I read this ahead of time, and I'm looking for the thing where he talks about... here it is. Ranking is the holy grail for Google, and when topics have more consensus, Schmidt is confident in the algorithm's ability to lower the rank of information that is repetitive, exploitative, or false. In cases of greater consensus, when the search turns up a piece of incorrect or unreliable information, it is a problem that Google should be able to address by tweaking the algorithm, he says. Now, this is where it's interesting. This is an insight into Google's understanding of truth and fact. Consensus equates to fact in the mind of Mr. Schmidt. Otherwise, why would he talk about consensus? And one reason why he might bring up consensus where it concerns fact is that if you have a fact that everyone believes on, then when the oddball comes out to dispute the fact, then Google can understand that that's the oddball, and this is obviously not fact. Whenever it's a fact that is verifiable, and therefore a consensus of people agrees it, then it should play out as easily as Mr. Schmidt thinks. For instance, fact: the team colors of Duke University are blue and white. This is verifiable. This is objectively true. Therefore, a consensus of people believes it. A consensus of people doesn't believe that the colors of Duke University are blue and white because they want the colors of Duke University to be blue and white. They believe that the colors of Duke University are blue and white because they are objectively the colors of Duke University. Therefore, it's consensus. So when a nutcase comes along and says, well, the colors of Duke University are actually red and black, and presents, whatever evidence he might have for those things, then the consensus is going to be, well, no, actually, the colors of Duke University are blue and white, and here is the laundry list of evidence that we can cite to verify that the colors of Duke University are blue and white. The territory where Mr. Schmidt is less comfortable and less confident and is having a harder time programming the algorithm to suppress this dissenting information. Remember, in this scenario, Google wants to be able to indicate to its readers ahead of time, or in another way suppress the dissenting opinion that the colors of Duke University are red and black. So when it comes to a more disputed fact, for instance, a more disputed statement, I'll say, for instance, the assertion that more guns in the United States of America leads to less crime in the United States of America. That is a much more disputed statement than the colors of Duke University is blue and white. There are large groups on both sides of this issue that do a lot of writing about this issue. And Google, as an algorithm, has a hard time determining which things are more... What's the word I'm looking for? Forgot the word. More dependable, I'll say. Therefore, the quote-unquote false information ends up bleeding into the true information. And this is not what Google wants. Google wants to be able to indicate to the reader ahead of time whether or not the information they're going to read is false. Or, alternatively, they want to suppress the information that is false. And when where consensus is concerned, consensus means that there's a different standard on which information is going to be judged that is not necessarily whether the information is true or not. Because there could be a consensus that a false statement is true. There could be a consensus, as there was hundreds of years ago, that the Earth is flat. Therefore, the dissenting opinion, the Earth is round, would be judged as false. That's the problem that Google is going to run into if they continue to pursue a consensus-based algorithm for its search engine. This is the danger that the internet faces if Google is allowed to continue pursuing this, to continue to pursue an algorithm that judges content based not on truth, but on consensus. In my opinion, Google should not judge the content. The content should be presented for the reader to make their own decision. In my world, Google doesn't have to worry about making a judgment on the information. But in Eric Schmidt's world, Google has the moral imperative to make a judgment on the information. Therefore, a standard must be set, and the easiest standard to set is consensus. It's much, much more difficult to set a standard based on truth, because you might be forced to acknowledge that something you don't agree with is true. Therefore, consensus is the standard that will be pursued. This is a danger that we've been talking about for a long time coming. YouTubers like Lauren Southern and Dave Cullen of the Computing Forever channel have been talking about issues like this for a long time. And we're starting to see people at Google be more open, not just about the fact that they're pursuing to borrow the phrase, problematic standard of fact or fiction, but that they're having a problem with it, as if maybe fishing for help. This is a danger that our society is facing. In other news, the last story that we're going to look at today, France's I'm going to botch this, Marie Le Pen says victim of banking fatwa over account closures. Now, fatwa is a word that means people are out to get you. I believe it comes from Islam. The most common fatwa is placed on a person because they drew Muhammad or they violated some other sin. Now, according to this story, Marine Le Pen accused 2 banks on Wednesday of launching a fatwa to silence her National Front party by closing bank accounts of hers and her party's. The bank said they had acted within regulatory requirements, but declined to offer fuller explanations. Now, let us see. There does not appear to be any evidence offered to support the claim that the bank closed the accounts based on the beliefs of Le Pen and her party. However, just because the banks say they acted within regulatory requirements doesn't mean that politics was not a motive. You know, the show The Last Man Standing was canceled from, was it CBS that was carrying that show? I don't recall. They canceled the show. It was their best performing comedy that I'm aware of. Very highly performing comedy. It was their best performing show on the night that it was airing. And the president or the executive producer or whatever decided that when they rescheduled their shows so that all of the comedies aired on the same night, she decided to cut Last Man Standing. She decided that there were many reasons cited for canceling Last Man Standing, including the fact that it was licensed from the Fox network. Therefore, it was much more expensive to run. It was a very successful show, therefore the people involved could have been asking for more wages. They might have been entitled to more wages, and the network couldn't afford to continue carrying the show. However, that doesn't mean that politics played absolutely no part in cutting the show. The individual involved in making the call is quoted in other stories as rethinking the lineups of their shows because of the election of President Trump. So just because the bank says that there are regulatory requirements that allow them to close the accounts of Le Pen and her party doesn't mean that they didn't use politics as perhaps a reason to begin investigating those accounts to try and see if there is a way to close them. I'm sure there are other accounts that the bank has that could be terminated, but they're not investigating those accounts because they have no reason to. So perhaps this is a legitimate outcry by Miss Le Pen and her party. Perhaps not. I assume that if Miss Le Pen intends to press charges, that an investigation, will result and that will produce more answers. I wouldn't be surprised if nothing happens because of this. It was just something that I thought was interesting and I thought was worth talking about. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy your Thanksgiving break. I hope that it's a long one. I hope that it's a great one. I hope that you all have a lot to be thankful for this Thanksgiving season. I'm especially thankful that you've chosen to join me in support of this channel. Thank you all so much for the support that you've shown me thus far, and I hope that we can continue to move forward and grow this channel together. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did. Hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Until next time, have a fantastic holiday and God bless.